Jason, you wrote an article this morning on a statistic we don't talk about quite a lot that you think we should be talking about a lot more. So the floor is yours to explain the article, and we'll dive into whether or not we think EPA per dropback is the best way to predict success in the NFL or not.
Well, the genesis behind it was Ben Johnson at his introductory press conference for the Bears last week. Got a question about Caleb Williams, and he said that for decades, everyone measures team success on turnovers, and that really quarterback success is a better predictor for wins and losses than turnovers. So that kind of caught my attention, and we have access to a lot of different advanced stats, and there's a guy who works at True Media who used to work for the Athletics, so I put him on the case and said, what is he right or wrong? Tell me if he's right or wrong. And he came back and said, oh, he's right, like this. And so EPA per dropback is basically measuring what does the quarterback do with the ball in his hands. And the best quarterbacks can overcome turnovers. Is essentially it. Nobody is saying turnovers are not important. I am not saying that.
You're saying this is more important.
This is more important. Yeah. And really, I think in Cleveland, and so I started this as I wanted this to be a Cleveland piece. Obviously, the Browns are looking for a quarterback. So I wanted to try and marry it to Cleveland.
Right.
And the numbers that came back, it was like, no, this is more of a national piece. And, you could lose the turnover battle, but if you win the EPA per dropback differential, which is basically your quarterback's numbers against the opposing team's quarterbacks. If your quarterback wins,
can you explain
on dropbacks,
briefly how that EPA is
and so there's 100 different variations.
Okay, so that don't go into
it. But so for this, the reason I like EPA per dropback is it does take turnovers into account.
Right. Yeah.
And as Bull and I were talking before the show, there's really nothing subjective about it. It's down in distance, it's time on the clock, it's score, it's third down, fourth down. It's all of those factors factored in. So you don't necessarily get credit for garbage time passes. But you do get credit for 4th and 3, converting on 4th and 3. You get dinged for turnovers. So it takes turnovers into account while measuring it against turnovers. Mm-hmm. So if you win the EPA per dropback differential, if your quarterback is better than their quarterback, that's more important than if you lose the turnover battle. And we saw that with Kansas City Buffalo. Kansas City lost the turnover battle and won the game because Mahomes, statistically, was better than Josh Allen.
By a little or by a lot? To me, I thought they played pretty close.
It was one of Mahomes' top 10 performances of his career. So it was by
a substantial margin.
It was because I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but Josh didn't play poorly at all.
No.
But Mahomes was better.
Okay.
So even when you look at that, say for instance, Josh picks up that 4th and 1 quarterback sneak, he probably would have been rewarded greatly for that. And if they win the game, you can look at that play and say,
well, that's not a running play by the quarterback is not factored in, or how?
I'm not going to lie. I don't know.
I bet it is. I bet somewhere in there.
I think it's everything that the quarterback does because it's a quarterback-heavy metric.
Now, what's interesting is
EPA is expected points added. So every play you're adding or subtracting points, and it's 1/10 of a point. 2/10 of a point.
Sure.
Interception, you lose 3/10, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So EPA is expected points added on every play.
And before we dissect this, Jason sent me some numbers. I just want to put these graphics on the screen. These are the top 5 quarterbacks this season and expected points added per dropback. Steve, just take this full. You don't have to box it anything. But Lamar, number 1 in the league at 0.31. Jared Goff, 0.27. Josh Allen was 3rd. Tua was 4th. And Brock Purdy was 5th. Steve, take the next graphic. These were the bottom 5 in EPA per dropback this season. Anthony Richardson in the negatives. Drew Lock, Will Levis, Spencer Rattler, and then Deshaun Watson finished dead last of any quarterback that threw 200 or more pass attempts this season in terms of EPA. And then Jason sent me one more stat that I know he didn't remember. Steve, take the next graphic, please. But the win percentage in the regular season over last 5 years, if you win the turnover battle, you had a 78 win percentage in those games. If you won the EPA per dropback battle, just the quarterback, you won 80%. So both very high.
But it is neck and neck.
But it is 2 points higher in terms of win percentage.
Here's what I thought was interesting. I gotta find it now. I just took a screen grab of it so I could find it.
I got it.
You
found it?
I got it. Last 5 years, if you lose the turnover battle but your quarterback wins, you have a winning percentage of .519.
Right.
In the playoffs, that jumps to .571. So lose the turnover battle, but your quarterback's better, you're going to win 57% of the time. Is that 100%? No, of course not.
Yeah,
You're
right.
playing the odds on this. This is what we were talking about before the show.
Right.
It's like blackjack. If the dealer's showing 6, he may turn a 5 and pull a king. Like, it happens.
Sure.
But you're going to play the odds.
Always play the math.
And that's what the odds are. Now,
Yeah.
conversely, if you win the turnover battle, but you lose the quarterback battle, you have a 48% winning percentage. In the playoffs, it drops to 429. So win the turnovers, lose the quarterback, you're only winning 43% of the time.
Right, yeah, I
It's
get that.
it's all numbers and odds.
Just to be a contrarian.
Yeah.
Because I, by the way, love EPA. I love its importance, and I love the fact that teams are actually looking at this when they're building their roster. I think it's important. It goes to my thesis that the quarterback position isn't just the most important position in football. It's the most important position in sports, period. Full
And it's
stop.
not even close.
Not even close.
There's more. I was thinking about this. Patrick Mahomes is more valuable than prime LeBron, frankly.
I agree.
Because we always looked at basketball. It's 10 players on the court. You're one of 5.
Yeah.
LeBron, go back to Game 7 against Boston in 2018. Draymond, I was talking to Draymond about this. Draymond's like, he controlled the entire game. One guy controlled all 10 guys.
At both ends.
At both ends. That's exactly right. But Mahomes is so far and away. This is why nobody can catch the Chiefs, because Mahomes is so good, and these pressure moments and these clutch moments,
it.
everybody's chasing him.
So that's what I love about your number, that it jumps up so much in the playoffs, and your winning percentage jumps up in the playoffs as the quarterback plays better. I don't know if Patrick Mahomes has become bored September to December. It looks to me like he has.
I mean, that was LeBron. Doesn't care about the regular season.
Didn't care. Just get me to April.
Yeah.
And I think that Mahomes is even more so to that. Mahomes is like, yeah, we'd love to be the 1 seed. We'll do everything that we need. If you look at their games, 12 of them were one-score games. They won all 12.
Yeah.
This guy is got the clutch gene like no one I've ever seen. But to be a contrarian, I'm not sure that I buy that EPA is definitively number 1.
Okay.
In determining team success. And here's I spent 10 minutes on this.
Mm-hmm.
I should have spent longer. Here's what I found out. I just looked at the turnover ratio at the end of the season. The top 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all made the playoffs. 13 of the top 15 made the playoffs. There's 14 playoff teams.
Yeah.
13 of the top 15 all made the playoffs, predicting absolute team success. The 2 that were in the top 15 that did not make the playoffs, Chicago at 10, not quite sure how that happened. Maybe their defense, I didn't look, I should have. Maybe their defense just had a lot of takeaways. And because I know that they had a lot of giveaways. Cincinnati was top 14. To me, Cincinnati, and this isn't close, was the best team in the NFL not to make the playoffs this year.
Certainly the best offense.
Cincinnati. So if Cincinnati had made the playoffs, you would be able to say that 13 of the 14 teams that made the playoffs were in the top 14 in turnover ratio. The 2 teams that were not in the top 14 that made the playoffs, the only 2, were Washington, they were 15th. Tampa Bay was 20th. The bottom 2 teams in the NFL in playoff ratio, or in turnover margin, Cleveland and Tennessee. So, and the reason I like this more, and it's kind of like because this also greatly takes into account the play of the quarterback.
Yeah.
So it's it really is using a lot of what you're talking about, quarterback efficiency, but it also takes into account the other 11 players that start games that have nothing to do with offense.
But
they matter too.
It's not like you can't have more than one statistical analysis that points to whether you're good or bad.
No, there's
one
many,
of them,
by the way.
like one could be turnover, one could be EPA. Like, if you take a look at them, what would probably be more scientific is if you take a look at turnovers, EPAs, and look at a bunch of other things.
Well, that's why
and
I
then
like
say,
yeah.
Well, but what Jason said is the winning percentages are higher for teams that had the better EPA than the turnover.
But there's a margin.
So,
there's a margin of error. It's only 0.2.
And here's the other thing I don't like about that specific nugget of that number.
Yeah.
It's just looking at one game. It's looking at the one game. Like, so if you won the turnover margin.
No, it's 5 years.
No. I'm saying for that game. Like that's what your stat was. So in other words,
but he was looking
at the end of
5
one
years
game,
of one game, right?
Over the past 5 years,
yes,
if you lose
the turnover margin
and win the quarterback
in the game.
in the game.
Yeah, that's and so.
But you're only playing one game at a time.
I understand that, but I want to look at numbers that are aggregate. I don't want to look at a sliver of a number in a moment in time.
This is aggregate.
No, aggregate would be the total.
But it is.
But it is. It's the total over the season.
No, you're adding all of those
57% is
together,
pretty
yes, to
significant.
get a total number. But the turnover margin takes your turnover, whether you won the turnover battle in game 1 and game 5 and 9 and 7 and 11, all into account. It's at the end of the season, the compilation of all of those statistics.
But if you force 6 turnovers in one game and 1 turnover the next, that's skewed heavily to that one game.
Of course it is. However, when you're looking at and measuring individual games, you're using one game for that to make that ultimate
but then you're
analysis.
adding them together.
I know, but what I'm doing is I'm saying for the collective season. So you could win. It's possible that you could win the turnover margin in 16 of the 17 games, but have a plus minus. You know how? If you were plus 1 in all 16, but you were minus 17 in one game, you have a negative plus minus. Are you following that?
That would be a misleading number.
That would be what we would call an outlier.
Yeah, well, more than an outlier, it's an anomaly. It's like you can almost, like a lot of, we don't do this, I didn't do this for this, but I know a lot of times at ESPN, for certain stats, not all of them, when they were doing season aggregates, they would take the highest and lowest out and then aggregate. And there is a actual formula for when you should do that and when you shouldn't. It was way over my head. It had been explained to me many times. I didn't understand that. But I do think, and I'm not saying EPA isn't important, and I love EPA. All I'm saying is I think turnover margin heavily takes into account the quality of quarterback.
But the quality of quarterback.
But what doesn't take into account at all, zero, is how good your defense is.
Yeah, but
so that stat is to say your defense doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't say it doesn't matter.
Well, if you're saying
it just says it's more of an indicator of winning, which is factual.
No, see, because Bull, you're not following my
I'm
logic,
completely following.
And I'm probably not.
Jay, I understand what you're saying.
What I'm saying, Bull, is
I understand what you're saying.
Says don't even take into account what your defense does.
Right. That doesn't.
Okay. So I can't clearly say.
Yeah.
And I think my results prove it true.
No. It
yes. 13 of the 14 playoff teams were 1 through 13.
Right.
In turnover margin.
The winning percentage.
Let me ask you this. Did you get a rank this season of the top EPAs?
Yeah, it's in the article.
Okay. Did all 14 of the 1 through 14 top EPAs make the playoffs?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It was like 12 out of 14. Same as that.
13 out of 14.
But again,
it's not the same.
Again,
yeah, this is better because you had a higher winning percentage in games.
You're talking about individual games. I'm talking about.
But they're added up.
Success.
What's the difference? You're adding up. He's adding.
Because
it's the same
because
thing.
when I'm adding mine up, it's team success for the year. That's
but it's
the
not
biggest
team success. It's just one. The EPA adds up multiple statistics. Turnovers is one statistic.
Right, for one player.
Right.
Mine
counts
everybody that's on the field all the time.
But it's
wide
only one
stat
for everybody.
Of course.
Right. EPA is more than one stat. It's accumulation of multiple stats.
It's not one stat. A fumble, an interception, a forced fumble.
Those are turnovers.
Those are all.
But that's one category.
Yeah, but it's still multiple ways you can lead to this number. What I'm saying, Bull, is, again.
Jay, you keep saying what you're saying as if I don't understand.
You don't.
I told you. Don't tell me I don't. I've told you 5 times.
As you're repeating the point you think I'm making, you're not saying what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying. I disagree with you.
Okay, so let's just look at the numbers. The turnover margin, if we're using that number, 13 of the top 14 made the playoffs.
Okay.
That's
1 year you're bringing that
I didn't go back multiple years.
Okay.
Like I said.
This is 5 years.
I started this by saying I should have spent more time on it. I spent 10 minutes. It's all I had for it.
Yeah.
All of that being said, I've said for 25 years when it was first repeated to me, someone said to me when I was first in Tampa, you want to predict success in the NFL, you look at the turnover margin.
I know, but the interesting thing about that is he's wrong, and the EPA is more of an indicator.
In your mind, he's wrong.
Proven.
Real quick,
I'm just showing you this year.
We got to move on. But real quick, what was interesting, I talked to Mike Martz last night, their old Rams coach.
Yeah.
And I was mentioning some of this stuff to him. And back in the 90s, before EPA ever existed, anything.
Right.
He agreed that turnovers are overrated. Not that they're not important.
Yeah.
They're overrated. and he was looking at yards per attempt. He said that was the big.
That's a big one too.
Back in the '90s, and the Rams were throwing it farther than anybody.
By the way, look how that number's changed from the '90s to today.
Oh, it's unbelievable how much
it might be the biggest change in the game.
But Mike was one thing I want to point out. I thought was really interesting. Mike said he never talked to his if his quarterback threw an interception in the game, he never talked to him about it. He said nothing good will come of it. Yeah. That like if you go up, because you need to see the film to see what really happened. And when you're the coach on the sideline, and I think a lot of times we don't take that into account, that the game is moving so fast. Coaches don't always have the best angle for everything. They don't always see everything. We make fun of coaches that say we got to watch the tape.
Yeah.
But they really do have to watch the
do.
tape. So he said you don't talk in the moment. He said the quarterback is fragile. He just threw an interception. Yeah. The worst thing you can do is go over to him and say, what happened? And now he's trying to tell you, recite to you what happened, and he's getting lost in his own head. He said, I would just tell him, let's go. We're not stopping. Like, don't worry about that. We're moving on. Like, we're gonna keep throwing.
Hold on. I must say this. Listen, for all analytics people, if you're a football guy, you've been playing football, you watch football, you know football, these stats only tell you that Patrick Mahomes is pretty good.
No, he's the best, but by a lot.
At the end of the day, like, yeah, I could do EPA, I could do turnovers, but all I got to do is just watch the games and be like, Patrick Mahomes is good.
There's a major flaw with just looking at turnovers. There is no flaw, in my opinion, in EPA.
Well, here's the flaw.
Yeah.
If your defense allows 50 points a game, doesn't that hurt the team?
Sure, and that's going to be reflected in their record.
No, but see, here's what I'm saying. The quarterback can be flawless. Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Your defense can suck.
And
Where are you?
And that's why
you're now the outlier in my stat.
And that will affect the winning percentage of the team. And that's what I'm saying.
You just made my point.
But here's the massive flaw in turnovers, in just judging by turnovers, is that not all turnovers are created equal.
Of course not.
Okay, well then that's a major flaw in ranking based on turnovers.
Not all quarterback completions are created equal.
Well, but that's factored in EPA.
Factored into mine, too.
No, it's not.
Mine takes into account. See, and you should know this more than anybody, and here's why. You had a great quarterback. Where'd Joe Burrow rank?
Jay.
Wait. Where'd Joe...
I don't have it in front of me.
I want to know where Joe Burrow ranked in quarterback EPA. I bet it was top 5.
And he's also on your list. What I'm saying...
Where's their team?
Joe Burrow ranked 7th this year in EPA per drop.
They missed the playoffs.
I'm aware.
Okay.
I said there's flaws that not turnovers are created equal. That's not factored into your numbers. That all turnovers are not created equal.
Over a season, you're going to get and you're going to lose.
Okay, but
it all washes out over 17 games.
No, it doesn't all wash out.
It does. Sometimes
you're saying every team has the exact same amount of equal turnovers?
Bull, it's breaks. Sometimes your quarterback's going to throw a pick that's tipped at the line.
That's not what I'm saying.
Guess what? Your defense is also going to get those.
You don't understand what I'm saying, Jay. You say that to me all the time.
Yeah, you know what?
So
but unlike you, I'm going to say you're right, I don't.
No. Because here's what I'm saying, all right, is that if it's 3rd and 10 and I throw an interception, it's irrelevant that that's a turnover because that would have been a punt anyway on the next play. That's not the same.
No. So
what do you mean no? That's not true?
Bull, it's your... sometimes I feel like I can't discuss things with you because when you get an idea in your head, you build a wall and you're not opening it up.
That is untrue.
Right, we got to move on. The Giants. Here you go.
You just proved to me that it is true.
The Giants and the Saints finished 2nd and 3rd in turnover margin in 23, and they both missed the playoffs. Moving on.
Okay, that proves it.
Moving on.
Because I'll give you quarterbacks that are in the top 7 in the NFL and miss the playoffs.
But
moving on.
But I do want to move on.
Every stat has its flaw.
Of course.
Every measure of greatness has its hole.
If you win,
I like this one because it takes all the players into account.
If you win 58%, of the time, that means you're still losing 42% of the time.
That's right.
There's nothing that's 100%.
But the numbers show, here's a fact.
Yeah.
That the quarterback with the higher EPA in a game more often won than which team won the turnover battle. That's a fact.
That is a fact.
Yes.
You're right.
Yes.
For single games, I love that. Now, go ahead and predict turnovers for a single game. Good luck.
Why do I have to predict turnovers?
Well, because if you're saying that, I know this quarterback's going to have a great EPA, but how many turnovers are going to happen in this game? I don't know. But there is a trend that you can pick up on for a season because some teams prioritize. Philly's a great example. And by the way, I think the Super Bowl might prove me wrong.
It's only one game.
It is, but here's what I love about this matchup. I hate the matchup, and I love it. And here's why I'm going to watch it. This is one of those rare occasions where you're going to put up a run game and a great defense on one side against the all-time great quarterback, or one of, on the other side. We're going to find out for one game which one matters more. Actually, not which one.
Just for that day.
For that
which one
day.
was better that day.
But it is going to settle it a little bit. Philly takes the ball away at an astounding rate.
I don't think it's actually going to settle it at all because Kansas City also has a good defense.
I know they do.
And Philadelphia also has a good quarterback.
How did this turn into a preview? This wasn't
we got all next week to do it.
I think ultimately, and I'm glad it
wasn't it.
No,
let's talk about perverts.
The Super Bowl. It ended at the Super Bowl because we've got the all-time great EPA poster child against a team that has all-time great defense, all-time great running back. Who wins?
The Eagles don't have an all-time great defense.
Oh, no, we're not doing it.
All-time great?
No, we're not doing it.
We got all next week.
We're not doing it.
Perverts.
We're not doing it.